Hello and welcome to the Let's Talk Near Death podcast, where we talk about life, death and experiences in between. I'm Kirsty Salisbury, the host of the show, and I trust that the conversations within this podcast will offer value, insight and information into what happens in the afterlife. To find out more about the free online community and extra content, be sure to click subscribe and to check out the links in the notes below. And now, let's get into today's episode.
And I remember this very pink-white light surrounding me. So my mind was trying to figure out, even at 11 years old, how in the world can I fall in this cold, icy pond but feel warm? And all of a sudden, I saw my life review. I started to have a life review. And I saw myself down on the floor, on the ground, bleeding out from the gunshot. I had never felt that much love before at any time in my life up to that point. And I knew that she was ascending into that ocean of all love and bliss. That was how I felt about that.
Welcome back to the Let's Talk Near Death podcast. Today we are talking all about meditation. Our guest today is Don Hose, and Don has had some really interesting experiences in life. He's had near-death experience. He's had a couple of near-death experiences, actually. He has had many out-of-body experiences, and he's all about meditation and connecting with spirit. So Don Hose, it is great to have you here. I'm excited to get chatting about this because this is one of the topics that is sort of slightly on the outside, I suppose, of the near-death experience topic. So welcome to the show. It's fabulous to have you here.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Tell us, how did you get into this meditation? Take us back to your near-death experience and how this all led into what you're doing today.
Well, I was raised a Christian, an Episcopalian in the church. And when I was about 12, there was a card on the book table. The card said, if you meditate on me for 5 minutes a day, your life will be changed. And there was a picture of Christ on that card. It was a statue, but the eyes caught my attention. So I'm looking at the eyes of this picture, listening to how my life can be changed through meditation. And at that time, I didn't know what meditation meant. I didn't know what it was. So I had to go to the library and look it up, and wasn't satisfied with anything I was getting until I found a book called Om, O-M. There was an Indian gentleman there, and he was doing exercises. They were all hatha yoga exercises. So that wasn't what I was looking for either. But in the very back of that book, he gave meditation instruction. And I remember he was sitting in the lotus position and he was laying down. And he advised not to lay down because you'd fall asleep. And that's exactly what happened. I'd try it and lay down and I'd fall asleep. So I was about 13 when I began to meditate. I'd only had one near-death experience up until that point. A couple of years earlier, I fell through the ice in a pond, and immediately I went from cold to warm, and I remember this very pink-white light surrounding me. So my mind was trying to figure out, even at 11 years old, how in the world can I fall in this cold, icy pond but feel warmth? And then I realized that I wasn't inside myself. So we can come back to that experience because I don't know how I got from that water to the edge where I found myself cold again and wanting to go into the house and get warm. That was the first conscious recollection of a near-death experience. I began to meditate around into my 13th year. And lo and behold, I started experiencing the same light in meditation that I had experienced earlier in that near-death experience. And so I started reading books about the astral plane and ethereal realms. And I thought, my goodness, I'd like to go there. That's something that I want to do. And I remember thinking, during the near-death experience, I had to have something happen to me to eject me from my body. I had to have some kind of chaos, or later I learned that was an involuntary experience. I had no control over it. But then through these meditation practices, thing that I was doing, I had control over what I was doing. And so that was called a voluntary experience. So over time, the light grew brighter, the experiences became more beautiful, more blissful, more intense. Started seeing different colors of sky, things like that. I said it went on for a couple of years. By the time I was 16, I had some pretty profound out of body experiences. And I usually tell people during my 17th year, I had over 300 of them just in that year alone.
Wow, that's a lot. 300. I mean, there's not many more days in the year, are there? So multiples in one day.
Well, no, not in one day, but I have done that maybe twice in a day because I meditate twice a
Yeah.
day. But the point was that you hit it on the head. 365 days in a year means
Yeah.
you almost have to be doing something on a daily or a regular basis, and that's the point.
Yeah, that's amazing. And these were controlled. You were able to trigger them, or you were in control of when they happened, or were they
Well, I
spontaneous?
thought
They were only in meditation?
absolutely, and I thought that for a long time. I thought it was me, and then I come to realize later that there was a power greater than me that was in control of it. In other words, for me, out of body experiences, whether they're NDEs or OBEs, are blessings.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't want to sound religious. It's for some reason, and it shouldn't, it turns a few people off, but they are blessings. And the reason I say that is because we're given them to let us know that there's more to life and more in the beyond than just this earth realm, just this life.
Yeah.
And they're given to us to encourage us to have them. And so my observation in the last couple of years that I've joined one of the programs on Facebook is that people seem to be content with having one near-death experience, maybe two. It seems in general 1 to 4 is the number.
Mm.
Very few people seem to have more than 4 near-death experiences. Daniel Brinkley had 3 or 4. Most people have one,
Mm.
and they seem to feel or think or say, that's it. I had it. I experienced God, and that's it. And I'm
Mm.
thinking, my God, you have no idea there's so much more to the
Mm.
process.
So do you think that we're all able to tap into this? You're saying there's so much more. Is there
Yes,
so much more for everyone, or do you think that your near-death experience when you're in the pond
I,
triggered your ability to have these?
I think human beings are designed to have out of body experiences. In other words, we were created to have them.
Okay. Yeah.
And I have, there's a chapter in my book where I talk about that and try to lay it out for people so that anybody from 5 to 105 can do it.
Yeah. That's exciting. It opens up a lot of opportunity, doesn't it? Like you
Yeah.
say, we get so content, but I've heard so many times people saying this is available for us all. This is a beautiful experience that anyone can tap into. So let's track back your near death experience. You said you've had a couple of them. The first one was when you were 11 years old. So quite an interesting time in life where you may be finding who you are as a person, starting to establish some things for you in your own life. You
Sure.
had this experience. You said that you saw this light, this pinky white light,
Hmm.
and that turned out to be the same light that you saw later on in your meditation sessions and your out of body experiences there.
Yes.
Were you connected to your body at that point? What was the light like? Were you aware of your body? Were you thinking, hey, I'm dead, I just drowned? Or what was going on for you?
I was thinking that I was not in my body and
Okay.
that this must be what heaven is like, or somehow I've joined with the light of God that I read about when I grew up in Christian scripture. There's a lot of talk in the Bible about the light. I am the light of the world, the kingdom of God. There's a lot of talk about that, which is me talking about other realms in existence.
Yeah.
There's a passage that says there are many mansions in the house of my Father, many realms in creation. And many people talk about the astral realm and then the ethereal realm. And we all know about the earth realm because we live here. But very few people talk beyond that. Beyond the astral, there's the causal realm. And
Mm.
beyond that, there's more. There's like 5 more realms. There's a total of 8 or 9 realms, according to everything that I've read. So why get stuck on just talking about the astral realm or the ethereal realm? Most people that have the NDE, the near-death experience, they think they're in the astral realm. And there's a realm, what I call the in-between, or the ethereal realm.
Mm.
And how do I know about that? Because if you leave your body and you go to the ceiling, or you go to another room or across town, or even up in the sky, and you're looking down on everything, how are you in another realm? You're still earthbound. You're just not in your body.
Oh, that's really interesting. You're right.
See?
Yeah.
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 See, there's no way in the world. Even if you go to the moon, which is our moon. See, people go to the moon. So I went to the moon. I went to some stars. I went,
Yeah.
there's outer space to the physical realm, and then there's inner space. Inner space takes us to higher realms. So people that have been to these astral realms, there's specific things that they experience. There's things that they mention. There's things like there's an astral moon and an astral star and an astral sun. And in that realm, those things never set. On the physical realm, we rotate. So the sun sets and rises, the moon sets and rises. But on the astral realm, there is no rotation, there just is. And so you look at the sun that never sets. And there's been many people that write about this beautiful sun and moon in their poetry, especially mystic poetry. I'm a mystic poet, so I can relate to it. So there's talk about, well, let's look at the sun that never sets. They're talking about an ethereal or the astral sun or moon that never sets. The star of the Magi, the Star of David. There's a lot of names for this mystic star that people find and see that it's symbolic on the Islamic flag, for goodness sakes. There's a crescent moon with a little star on the Islamic flag. There's a message there that they don't even know. If you don't know about the inner, then you're not able to put these things together and make it make any sense. But it makes perfect sense if you have the awareness.
I love that if you have the awareness, because I was just sitting here going, man, it's quite easy to get overwhelmed by this. It is quite mind boggling to think how enormous everything is and how unlimited things are. The question I have for you, Don, is you were talking there, you just said about how if you're having an out of body experience and you're outside of your body, potentially looking at your body, or you're going around different things, you said you go to another room or whatever. For you personally, when you're having these out of body experiences, I mean, you have them practically daily. Have you got control of them? Are you able, is it like when we talk about lucid dreaming, where you're able to control where you go, what you see, what you experience? Or is it something out of your control and you are just absorbing the experience? You just are the experience.
I'm going to say it's both.
Okay.
And
What clarifies that?
well, it means that I or you or anyone can learn how to have an out of body experience, but it's unpredictable what your inner experience is going to be. In other words, what you experience or see or what happens, we don't know what that's going to be.
Yeah.
But to be able to have the out of body experience, there's an art to that. Now, in my workshops, I call it the art of stillness. It's about learning how to slow your physical vibration, your emotional vibration, and your mental or thought force or thought vibrations down to a point where you're considered still or dead. And that's when the magic happens. That's when people start to experience the light, and they talk about this incredible peace and heavenly experiences of light. And some people even hear vibration or the or hum or this high frequency like a seashell or a conch.
Yeah.
Many people describe these different sounds, which is just the beginning, by the way. And so quantum physics says everything is made of light and sound or vibration. Everything.
Yeah.
Everything vibrates, and the vibration causes the light. So that's what we are. You and I are light and sound. And you can call it a soul, you can call it an embodiment of light, you can call it love, but we are that encased in this physical body. that you and I are looking at and talking to each other here on this video. But this is just our vehicle for getting around on the earth realm.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with that. I do think that we are spiritual beings here in these physical bodies.
Yes.
Don, you've said that you've had a couple of near-death experiences. Are you happy to share some of the other ones that you've had?
Yes. When I was about 19, I had a gun pulled on me.
Oh, wow.
And the person that had the gun that gun was probably 2 feet in front of my face. And so all of a sudden I could feel my adrenaline rushing, and I felt my soul currents in my body starting to withdraw. And so where we leave at the time of death is right here. And this is what I'm pointing at is the third eye, mystic eye, single eye, the Ajnu chakra. There's 1,000 names for this.
Just for our
worldwide.
listeners who may be listening to an audio-only version, Don is currently pointing to between his eyes and his forehead, sort of mid-forehead.
Yes, between the two eyebrows and over the top of the bridge of the nose is a good distance. So I could feel my spirit current or soul withdrawing from my feet and legs and hands, and it was withdrawing to the center. And so what happens when people die, the spirit current withdraws to this Ajnu chakra, the sixth chakra. And sometimes when my grandmother passed, I was with her, and her eyes, her physical eyes turned up, rolled up in her head, roll up like that. And if you're with in hospice or something and you watch the person die, you'll see their eyeballs just roll right up because the attention is being withdrawn up to the center right here. This is where we leave, not from the top of the head, but from here. This is it. So I could feel that happening. And so as it was happening, I said, oh my goodness, I'm leaving myself. What in the world is going on? And all of a sudden I felt very powerful. And I thought to myself, you have a choice here. You can agitate this person and cause more chaos, and perhaps they'll shoot the gun, and that will end your life. Or you can be very calm and go into your usual state of stillness, and the magic will happen. And they won't shoot you because they won't be able to. And so I chose not to be shot. I wanted to live longer. And all of a sudden, I saw my life review. I started to have a life review. And I saw myself down on the floor, on the ground, bleeding out from the gunshot. Yeah. And I thought, oh my goodness, I don't want that to happen. There were 2 children standing near. And I thought, I have to end this because they're present also. And this is not going to be good for them. There was a 5-year-old and a 12-year-old. And I said, I've got to end this thing right now. This cannot go on like this. So once I calmed down and I became calm, it changes the situation. See, once you change your mind, you will change the situation around you. If you want to change your mind, then you have to change the situation. So in this case, I wanted to change my situation. So I had to change my mind. And I had to go from retaliation and chaos and overreacting and all that stuff. I had to calm down and get rid of the ego and just go into this state. And I did that. So what I saw in the life review never happened. Or I wouldn't be here today to be able to tell you about this. That ended. I came out of that seeing myself in the life review. There was this brilliant light. At the same time, I could see everybody in the room and the person that was pointing the gun at me. And so I felt myself re-injuring myself, coming back down to earth, so to speak. That was the end of that experience. I'm giving you the quick version of it.
Yeah.
That was a definitely out of body or near death experience. So what I've learned is that sometimes you don't have to have a car accident to have a near death experience. You could have the fear of dying in that car accident that could do it. It doesn't have to actually be that you drowned or anything. It could be the fear.
Yeah, or the possibility, perhaps.
So it's fear that triggers a lot of near-death experiences.
Yeah, wow. I want to just backtrack. You said that you came up through your forehead, you had this life review, and you could choose. I can't remember your exact words. You said something like, I chose not to die. Did
Yeah, I
you
didn't want
feel
to.
like,
Yeah,
yeah,
I
did you
didn't want
feel
to
like
die.
you actually had a choice? You could have chosen either way.
Well, in that moment, I did. Maybe that choice was given to me by a higher power. I don't know. I would think maybe yes.
Yeah.
But I chose to live versus what I saw. The other possibility was that I could have had my head blown off, laying on the ground, and I was bleeding out, and I was going to die in front of two children. That never happened.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
So I was
Wow.
shown that because it's like if you push this situation, that's one way that this can go. If
Yeah.
you back off and you don't push the situation, then you will live.
And I think that's valid for so many situations we have in life, even ones that aren't potentially dangerous. Just we have so much control in our situations that maybe we don't realize we do. But I love that point that you made about being still, being slowing everything down to that point where we can be still enough to understand what is actually taking place.
Everything happens in stillness. There's a passage, Psalms 46:10. It says, "Be still and know that I'm God."
Mm,
That's mind-boggling because you're telling me that I can be still, and at some point I go into the now, the present, and I can actually know God just by
mm,
being still.
mm,
So after many years of meditation, I think so.
mm,
And there's people talking about healing, and I'm trying to tell people all healing begins in stillness. It begins inside. It doesn't. You can do all the applications, take these workshops and this course and get certified and this and that, and you're going to have some success. Where's the power coming from? Where does all of it come from? It comes from within.
mm,
There's a stillness within us all, and we learn how to tap into that source, then that's where all healing, all love, all compassion, all ecstasy, all of those qualities of love, that's where they come from. They don't come from outside. You can run up on a mountaintop or down on the ocean bottom or to the moon. You're not going to find it because it's not out there. It's
mm,
inside.
that's beautiful. You've obviously got a very strong foundational belief in God. How has this played out through your experiences? How does this play out today? Do you subscribe to a specific, I'm going to say a belief system? Like, can you put a label on what you believe or how you practice your life?
Well, I do believe that the light that people experience in these near death and out of body experiences is God. And I
Mm,
believe that's what we are. I believe we are that light. When we are experiencing light, we're experiencing ourselves. So I believe and feel that our light is the light of God or a creator or a source. We could go on and give a bunch of names, but
yeah,
that's
exactly.
what that is. For me, it's love. There's
Yeah.
an ocean of all consciousness, and that would be a synonym also for love and for God.
Mm,
So I do have a spiritual teacher. I think it's important to have a spiritual guide or teacher because we're all students on the way. And
mm,
so, you look at life on the earth realm, when we want to learn something, we all go to a teacher. If I want to learn how to be a lawyer, I go to law school.
mm,
If I want to be a doctor, I go to medical school, but I'm taught by teachers, not by books. The books are fine. The classes are fine. The workshops are fine, but it's the teacher. When we're born, our first teachers are our parents or our caregivers or caretakers.
mm,
We are naturally here on this realm students that when we want to learn something, the best way to learn is from another human being or a teacher.
mm,
So if we
mm.
got teachers in sports, I played football. I had a football coach as a teacher. So everything, I went to school, you went to school, we went to college, we had teachers. Why not have a spiritual teacher? It just makes
Yeah,
sense.
exactly. I think anything that we want to progress in our life, anything we want to, I guess, learn more or master a bit more.
Right.
Absolutely. I totally believe in the power of mentorship and teaching, training, all of that type of stuff. That's brilliant.
So for me, I found out if you were going to continue this journey and get into these higher realms, beyond the earth realm, beyond the astral, that you had to have someone that had already been there, done that. And so I did a lot of reading, Paramahansa Yogananda. I don't know if you've heard that name or familiar with him.
Yeah.
But there's a book called The Autobiography of a Yogi, and he talks about the astral and the causal realms and his experience with that. And he's not the only one. There are many, many teachers of the different realms, from the past and even present. So I think it's very important to have a spiritual teacher or guide. I went to India when I was 19, and I met my teacher at that time, and I've had one ever since.
That's excellent. There's so much in here. Do you think your life would be quite different if you hadn't have had that initial near-death experience at 11 years old?
Probably, because that experience became a memory for me after I had found the card in church. It said, if you meditate on me 5 minutes a day, your life will change. That was the one that was the kicker. For me, it wasn't the NDE at 11. It was reading that card and not knowing what even the word meditation meant.
Yeah, so what did you do at 13 years old? You're reading Meditate on Me 5 minutes a day.
Your life will change.
What did you do?
Yeah, so I started looking for books. I started looking for meaning. I went home and looked in the Webster's dictionary, and it said deep thinking. And I'm like, no, that's not what I'm looking for. Yeah. And so, months later, I went to the library and I'm looking up. I found 2 books at that time where I grew up on meditation. And I took one of them out. And that's where I saw the gentleman in that book at the very last page when he was done all the hatha yoga positions. He was laying on his back. He said, you can meditate laying down, or you can let us sit up and meditate. I started emulating what I saw there. And I actually remember timing my first meditation. It was 7 minutes.
Wow. That's a long time ago too. That's amazing.
And now I could probably sit for 2 hours at one time.
Yeah.
So you're not sitting there for an hour or two if nothing's happening.
Yeah, exactly. Has there been any other near-death experiences?
Yes, but right now I'm just going to go with the 2 that I shared with you.
Go with the 2? Okay, that is fantastic. Yeah, it's so interesting. The other question that I was about to launch into was your grandmother. You were with her at the time of her death. You talked about how her eyes rolled up towards this point where we depart our physical body.
Yes.
What else was happening in that experience? Was there anything significant that you remember that stood out?
Yes, they had closed all of the window shades in her room in the hospital, and she was on a ventilator, and that ventilator started to go slower and slower, and I knew that any moment when it stopped, she was going to leave her body. So I remember sitting beside her. I wasn't supposed to go in there. No one was allowed to go in that room, but you weren't going to stop me. My mother didn't even go in there. But my grandmother raised me, and I was determined to go into that room. What happened was the room was dark. It had all the windows closed. Everything was closed. This ventilator's getting ready to stop. I'm watching her eyes roll up in her head. And all of a sudden, it was like there were several suns in that room. That's how much light filled that room. The light in that room was just incredible. I had not seen anything to that point, anything like that. This is brilliant, radiant light. You can't even put color to it. It was radiant is the best word I can use to describe it. And so I'm watching her light leave her body. I'm watching her light as a spiritual being leave her body when that ventilator stopped. And so I wasn't sad at all. In fact, I was celebrating this moment that I was allowed to witness her leave her physical body and be immersed and engulfed in this radiant light that I had never felt that much love before at any time in my life up to that point. And I knew that she was ascending into that ocean of all love and bliss. That was how I felt about that.
Oh, it sounds amazing. And it's not the first time I've heard of a similar experience, and it just sounds incredible. So when they start saying that near-death experiences are all to do with the drugs in the system or the medical, the lights on the operating theatre, these types of things. The shared death experience, which sounds a little bit like what you've just had there, you can't deny that because I'm assuming at the time nothing wrong with you physically or health-wise.
No, I
And
never.
just to be able to experience that.
You made up a good point. I didn't do enough drugs or alcohol, and in fact, by that time, I had pretty much eased up on that because the particular teacher that I have, he requests that we don't do drugs and alcohol, and he requests that we clean up our diet, kind of back off the animal diet, and try to get into the vegetarian way of life. Well, I did all that. And so I wasn't under the influence of any drugs or anything like that. There was nothing, no chemical processes kicking off in my brain to create anything that I was experiencing. It was for real. Well, I use the example when you have a dream at night, you go to sleep and we actually dream several times during the night. When you wake up the next day, you could have the whole world, your children or your parents could tell you, you didn't have a dream. You couldn't have. That didn't happen to you. You know that you had that dream. And so no one can take that away from you. So I never worry about anybody not believing or thinking they can take away my experiences. I had it. People have them all the time. Like I said, they're given to us for a reason. We are supposed to get excited and want more. They're giving you to let you know, hey, there's a lot more to this. Let's go. Let's have more of this. If you were experiencing so much love and peace, I hear people describe what I describe all the time, right? You would think, wow, wouldn't you want to do that again? Wouldn't you want more? Not more of the trauma in the near-death experience. I'm talking about the inner experience that the NDE and the OBE both have. Once you leave the body, the experience is the same. It's just that the near-death experiencer, they have to go through some kind of trauma, childbirth, car accident, plane, drowning, a fire. And so what I've learned is they get many of them, not all, many of the NDEs, they want to tell that story. They want to tell the story about how they had, what caused them to have the near-death experience. Sometimes more than they want to talk about the actual inner near-death experience itself. And so I've learned now I have to be very patient and loving and listen to them. They need to be heard, just like in other forms of therapy. To me, sometimes these near-death experience groups is therapy for the NDE to share their story about how they got to that point. They got to talk about the fire that almost killed them. They have to talk about the car accident. They have to talk about the heart attack and how my heart stopped 5 times. And they have to talk about that. And it's very important that they share that story. And I'm all for that. But I want to hear about what happened after you left your body. What was the astral or the ethereal experience? And tell me more about these orbs and these clouds and these beings of light.
Yeah.
That's what I want to hear about.
Yeah, I totally relate with that. That's the stuff that really gets me excited. I think there's an element of the healing process in talking about the trauma, though. I think that's very real. For me, I could talk about the trauma much earlier than I could talk about the experience, just the way that it all sort of happened. But I'm with you. I want to know the spiritual stuff. I want to hear what happened. What did you see? That's why I ask all these questions. Thank you for sharing about your grandmother. I love that question. If anyone says, oh, I was with so-and-so when they died, it almost feels a little bit rude sometimes, but I'm like, I want to know what happened. Did you see anything? Did you experience anything? It's like this thing just lights up in me because I'm so curious. I want to hear that sort of stuff. Yes. So, yeah, very, very interesting, Don. Thank you so much for everything you've shared here. Now, I know you've got your book. We're going to put the link to your book in the show notes. So if you're listening along and you think, I want to check out Don's book, that will be in the show notes. You also do some speaking, you do some workshops and things like that. What is the one key thing you want to leave with our listeners today, Don? What's the one message?
The one message is that if you've had a near-death experience or an out-of-body experience, you can have it again. And for NDEers, have it without all the trauma you needed to have your experience. With practice through a meditative practice and with the help of a teacher, I suggest everyone is designed to have an inner or out-of-body experience. And I would ask, that's where our work is. If you're interested at all, please do. There's enough material. There are books. There's material is out here. People have had these astral realm experiences, and they've told how they've had them. Not just that they've had them, but they can tell you how. And so there is a process, like for anything else. Like I said earlier, the human being is designed to leave his body. I don't have time, but I have a whole chapter on that in a book that came out over 10 years ago now, how we're designed to actually leave our body. So everybody should have the experience.
Yeah. Oh, it's amazing. That word design really resonates with me. It's a very strong word. I think we need to get you back, Don. I think we need to chat on this further. Maybe we'll do a live session where people can ask their questions, because there's so many places I could divert this conversation. It's so beautiful. I love your message. We were designed to have these experiences. Anyone can have them.
Yes.
So Don Hose, thank you so much for joining us, for sharing your wisdom. The notes will have all the links where people can get hold of you, but thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thanks for joining me for another episode of the Let's Talk Near Death podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to stay updated with all of the events we have going on, and to visit www.letstalkneardeath.com to join the VIP community.